good evening. It is Monday, August 14th, 2023. Welcome to episode 32 of Porterhouse and Teal Live. Joining me tonight is Nicole Sauce from Living Free in Tennessee, Holler Roast Coffee, and the Self-Reliance Festival. Welcome, Nicole.
Hello. How are you today?
Oh, excellent. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. And, I'm excited to have you on tonight because I know that you recently completed a challenge called 75 Hard, and I want to talk to you about that and get your perspective on it. But before we do, why don't you tell folks who may not know who Nicole Sauce is, who you are and what you do?
Well, I think the fun thing about being on your show is you're West Coast and I'm in the South, but I come from the West Coast. I was born in the Portland, Oregon area and spent a lot of time in Ashland, Medford in Southern Oregon and Northern California, just hanging out there. And started life thinking I'd be a school teacher. And then I trained for that and realized I was not going to be a school teacher. And so I started training adults in the corporate setting on culture and language and American business practices. And somewhere along the line, I was in Portland, Oregon, and I'm looking around and watching them put light rail through all over the place and seeing the crime associated with that and sort of increasing commute times for people, pushing people into their cars. And I thought, well, this is dumb. If I was in charge, I'd do it differently. And then I thought, well, that's not fair. I shouldn't have to be in charge. And that was the day that I embraced just the personal responsibility and libertarian / anarchistic way of life. And I just happened to be working in a building on the same floor as a free market think tank. And so I toddled next door and started asking questions of this guy who specialized in urban planning. And over time, moved to Tennessee, ended up on a homestead that's just 3.2 acres, but we run sheep on 16 acres next door as well, and learned how to grow food, preserve food, store food, cook food, and help other people do the same thing.
Nice. Yeah. Some people may not know. I know because I've listened to you for some time. I've been a fan for some time. And I've listened to some of your conversations that you've had talking about your past. And you were somebody who, I guess, had said that you've been a liberal at one point, right?
Liberal bordering on communist is
Right.
where I came out of college.
Yeah.
And,
so go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, no. I mean, and it was because I wanted to help people. I believe in people and I still believe in people. And at the time, I thought the only way to help people was to take money from rich people and give it to poor people.
Right. Yeah, that's a big change, going from one political persuasion to the next, because there's really kind of like only two ends of the spectrum. And then there's those that are either apolitical or libertarian or however you want to define yourself in the middle. But to go from one to kind of more leaning conservative, that's a big switch for most people. And I am interested to know, what was the biggest reason for you making that change?
It was a fairness reason. It literally happened in a day. And then I had about 3 months of asking questions about, well, how do police work without the state? How do taxes work without the state? All of those questions. And I was lucky enough to find people who would answer me. But the thing, it was fairness, that the liberal, not classical liberal, but the left progressive solutions are completely unfair to people. And I saw that. And then I saw that, in fact, those solutions hurt more people than they help. And that if, rather than trying to make everything equal from a top-down perspective, we give people opportunities and get the heck out of the way, you have better outcomes from a prosperity standpoint, and people are more likely to get the health care they need, to get the education they need, to find a way to make money, and to get relationships that they need. And the people who fall through the cracks at that point you can concentrate on them rather than trying to help all these people who don't need help.
Right.
That it was all fairness. It is unfair to use progressive policies to further anything.
Right. Yeah. I think, I tend to agree with that assessment. And it's, obviously there's people who believe the other. So that's what makes the world go round. It's awesome that we've got, both sides of everybody thinks differently. You've been back to Portland recently. Have you been there recently at all?
I have not been to Portland since pre-COVID.
Oof.
So maybe 2018, 2019, I might have floated through there. My best friend lived there until 2020, and then he sold everything he owned in 1 year and moved to Florida. And
Yeah,
2020 was not, that was the year. He was just like, whoa, the city's burning, I'm out.
Yeah, it's a real shame. I haven't been there for probably a couple of years. I came through there, yeah, probably back around 2021, I think. And it is just a disaster. I mean, it's really a shame when you drive through some of those metropolitan areas that are, run in a way that embrace it all, just whatever goes. We're just going to allow people to do what they want to do. And it's just a real shame to see that, because these are great cities, San Francisco being one of them, Seattle, another. Seattle's, I mean, it's terrible. And Portland, I'm sure when you go back there, you're going to be disappointed, because it's crazy how those types of policies have led to the, where we are today, I guess. But
it will break my heart. I was just in Medford, Oregon last week for the first time since 2020. And even Medford has changed. There are places where I used to go by myself where I'm not sure I should. I don't know, but I just got that feeling on the street sort of thing. And I mean, it's not a huge crime, area, but it has a lot of issues that you can see.
sure, yeah, and I've seen the same thing here in my town. It's a small town, 15,000 people or whatever. It's a city, but we live well on the outskirts of that. But when you go into the city itself, we don't tend to go out at night because of that, because there's a lot of people walking around screaming at shit that doesn't exist, and it's kind of, it's just really changed in the last, I would say, probably 7 to 8 years. It's really been quite noticeable. And yeah, it's just a real shame. But anyhow, I didn't want to start on a down note. Let's talk about what you've been up to. You started the 75 hard challenge. And for those that don't know what that is, why don't you explain what 75 hard is? And we'll get into it a little bit.
75 hard is a challenge put forth by a guy named Andy Frisella, and he is from the Real AF podcast. So if you type REALAF, all one word, you will find his podcast, and you will hear bad words on that podcast. So spoiler alert on that one. You probably can guess what AF stands for. But he was an overweight couch potato and decided to change his life. And what he did was started with this 75 hard challenge, which is you work out twice a day for 45 minutes, follow a diet, any diet of your choosing, and no alcohol is allowed to be in that diet. You read 10 pages of a nonfiction book, drink a gallon of water, and you take a picture of your progress. You have to do that every single day for 75 days, no matter what happens. And it was something I thought a little bit about before I started, and then I just started.
Right. What was the hardest element for you to adhere to?
I think the hardest thing to work into my day was 2 45-minute workouts. One of them has to be outside. I had, during my 75 hard, I lost an uncle suddenly. It was at a funeral in Dallas, which was another place I wasn't super comfortable by myself in places of Dallas. And I had to creatively figure out how to get a workout in outside. And it was also 4,000 degrees that that particular week in Dallas. Maybe not quite 4,000. 300, 500 degrees outside, 3,500 degrees outside. And there were a lot of days of travel. So I had one day where my plane left at 5 a.m. from Washington State and landed in Nashville at about 3:30. And then I had to go home, and I had to fit an outside workout in there too. So I did some funny workouts in different places and managed to get it done. Because the point of it, I think, is doing those every day without stop, without failure, and without compromise for 75 days, no matter who dies, who has a birthday, who gets married, and which long lost friends that you're hanging out with that you usually drink cocktails with. So,
was there any point you thought of quitting it?
I didn't ever think of quitting it. I was afraid something would happen to me physically, like I would get the flu, and it would make it impossible for me to do it. But the beauty of the challenge is the more days you get into it, the more you're giving up. Because if you fail at one thing, you have to start your days over. So that means if like I forget to take a picture, then I would have to start my day over. So I was doing it mostly for the mental discipline, because I've been letting deadlines slip this year. And I knew I needed to do something different to get past that, because everything else I had tried did not work.
Right. I can almost answer this question, and I don't even know that much about it, but it says, do you think someone can modify 75 hard like substitute reading a book? And I think the answer to that is no, you can't substitute. You need to do it as it's prescribed. Or if you fail in any of that, you need to start over at day one, whether or not you're 60 days in or you just started, right?
Yeah, so it's not 75 hard if you modify it. That's the conclusion I came to. And when I was talking about it on my podcast, I said, this is the challenge I'm doing. Choose your own challenge. Do a challenge. And if you modify 75 hard and you're reading any kind of book, then it's not 75 hard. It's 75 soft, or it's 75 book, or it's 75 fiction. Just call it something else. It's not necessarily bad to change the challenge. The 75 hard challenge, everything is chosen for a reason. And I decided to do it as written, because I would say the thing I struggled with the most over time was drinking the gallon of water. In that I drink a gallon of water almost every day, but there are days my body just doesn't need it. And there were days where I had to force myself to drink that gallon of water when I knew I didn't need it. But the purpose of that part of the challenge is to make sure you're staying absolutely hydrated, because your mind is sharper when you're hydrated. And most people don't. I mean, it's the thing I walk around with all day is this bottle of water. Yeah. So yeah, I'm not dehydrated unless I'm at an event, and then I don't drink water and it hurts. So I learned how to drink water through events on the challenge, which was good.
What did you learn? I guess what was your biggest takeaway, and what did you learn in completing this? What did you learn about yourself? Because everything that I've ever done that's challenging or physically challenging or mentally challenging that you complete, you learn something about yourself. So what can you take away from this?
There were a lot of things, and I would say the biggest thing is, well, two things. One, decide. When you don't decide, you're deciding something. You're usually deciding no, or you're deciding something you don't want. And a lot of us get hit with a lot of things, and we have to make a big decision about a job, or where we're going to go on vacation, or what to do with a windfall, or how to get through a relationship issue. And it seems so big that we step back and we say, screw it, I'm overwhelmed, I'm not going to make that decision till I have time to think about it. And then we never decide. And when we do that, the situation usually resolves itself for us, or it decides for us. And often the decision that gets made when you don't decide is not what you would have wanted. And so when you decide, then you're honest with yourself. People around you know what's going on, and and you've gone a direction that is probably better than what will happen if you don't decide. And paired with that is a really important word that I've struggled with my whole life. It's a full sentence, a 2-letter word, no. I've learned to say no because I had to say no. I had to say no at parties to alcohol, which is hard in our culture. I had to say no to activities that would get in the way of me working out. I had to say no to things that would keep me up too late, because the best way to be successful at 75 Hard is get up early and go work out first. I would get up, drink water, work out, and come back, then have my first cup of coffee for the day. And I still do that now. So those are the two big lessons, and that's, boundaries. And those are all things that help you with discipline for then living up to my issue that I was trying to resolve, which was missing deadlines. It was because I was saying yes to too many things, and I could not physically do what I was saying yes to.
Yeah. There's been a lot of people that have succeeded in this. There's, according to what I looked up, there's like 100,000 people that have been successful at this particular challenge, but there's also been a lot of people who have been unsuccessful at this challenge, quite a bit more, I would assume. So why do you think people are unsuccessful in completing this challenge? Because it's not necessarily physically too demanding, because you set the terms of what the physicality is. Why do you think people fail at 75 Hard?
I think it's the no. I think it's they're not willing to trade off the things they need to trade off to be successful. And some of those things might be things you don't want to trade off, like time with your family. If you're going to fit an hour and a half of working out in, and you work a 12-hour shift every day, then that's 13 and a half hours of time before you've commuted anywhere or done anything. And if your kid's baseball game is when it is, you may find yourself not completing the workouts, or you may find yourself falling asleep when you're reading your 10 pages. So I think in some cases, people just, life gets in the way. I think it's also the duration, the 75-day duration. It's more than 2 months. Many of us can handle these things, like a crazy challenge like this, for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or even 30 days. But you start getting into that second month, and then second month in a couple of weeks. And I was very surprised to learn, even though I totally had enough time in the day, a couple of days, my I don't want to finish it bug like reared its ugly little head and said, you don't have to get out of bed today, Nicole, and go for that first workout. Like you can just hang out, whatever. You've got all day to get it done. And I had to learn to tell that voice to shut up, because that voice is in all of us. And me, I have always had this thing where I love to start projects and I'm less excited about finishing them. And it came up in the challenge twice, one at midway and the last 5 days of 75 Hard. My body was tired because I was trying to push the workouts a little harder too. And there were a couple of times where I was like, okay, 70 days is good. 72 days is good.
Nope.
And I was like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
So, that was a weird one. I was like, who is this terrible, discouraging voice in my life? And why are you there?
Yeah. The little angel on this one and the devil over on this one, just like screaming in your ear, keep going. No, stop.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of those things. I have respect for people who try hard things and then are successful. And again, this challenge isn't something that's physically outside of the reach of most people to complete, but it really boils down to, in my opinion, just how we manage our time. What we place our emphasis and priority on with regard to the 24 hours in a day that we all have. So if it's something that you've committed to in your own mind that, hey, this is important, and I'm going to adhere to this because I want to be successful, you will be successful. And those are the people that, in my opinion, are driven people. I mean, it's easy to start a challenge, but it's always a little bit more satisfying to complete that challenge. So, did you get a sense of gratitude from the completion of that? I mean, because there's no finish line medal, there's no write up in the paper, there's no accolade that you get. It's a personal thing. So, what did you get from that?
I did get a huge boost from finishing it, and I think I will do it more than one time in my life. John Willis told me just to do a year of hard, but I'm not committing to that because I don't want to commit to that right now. And I did look at the habits it built in my life that I like working out and sticking to a reasonable diet. Those two things aren't going away. I'm not committing to a gallon of water a day.
Yeah.
And I read anyway, so that was no big deal. I was like, yeah, right, so I read.
that was actually going to be kind of one of the things I was going to ask you next, was just, have you continued, as you had already mentioned, there's a couple things that you are getting up and working out and stuff like that. So what elements of the challenge have you decided to keep?
So I don't work out twice a day every day, but I do get up every day, and I start with a walk on the dogs, and then I have built in time to do a harder workout a couple of times a week. So that part, because the fitness that came from it, I'm a stronger person. So that's the physical part. I lost 15 pounds. I went down 2 sizes. I feel great. My blood work just came back looking awesome because I just had my annual physical, and I want to keep that. And I want to keep feeling like this. I don't have low back pain anymore because I started doing Pilates sometimes, which is all core strength. And I had this lower back problem that creeps down my leg that was really, it makes my hands like numb and stuff. Most of that's gone. Just because I started doing, ballet meets yoga, which is Pilates 3 times a week.
Right.
And I thought, I'm 50, and I'm super glad that I learned this when I was 50 and didn't wait till I was 60, when it would have been even harder to rebuild flexibility and core strength.
Yeah.
So realizing that, I took it. I've had a lot of opportunities in my life, or a lot of times when God gives me an opportunity, if I see it, I take it, and it makes a huge difference. And I think this was one of those times when I started thinking about 75 hard, and I was at my spring workshop, and I talked to somebody there who's done it twice, and she said she got to day 55 2 times. First time she got COVID and didn't finish the challenge. And the second time she was coming to my workshop and didn't drink the gallon of water driving from Oklahoma to Tennessee. Because she didn't want to pull over as much. And I'm like, and I would have pulled over. In fact, I did a couple 12-hour drives, and I pulled over a lot. But I think about when I was in high school, I joined the swim team. And at the time, I had just started smoking cigarettes. And I realized very quickly that you cannot be a competitive swimmer and a smoker. And so I decided to be a swimmer. And that's one of those times where that opportunity was put in front of me. And thankfully, I chose the right thing, because most of my friends from high school who smoked, because we all sort of started smoking at the same time, smoke to this day. They're addicted to the nicotine. It's negative for their health. I mean, you put 35 years of smoking cigarettes in there. And I really think that this challenge, when I started thinking about it, I did a whole bunch of yeah buts in my head. Yeah, but in 2 weeks, I'm going to go be with Jack Spirko and my buddy David, and we're going to want to have cocktails, so I can't start. Yeah, but, there's this family gathering, so I can't start. It was all about the alcohol. And I've been a person who likes to have a cocktail every day. And what I realized as the yabbits started happening was that was the purpose of 75 hard. And if I waited 2 weeks to start it after I was getting together with Jack, I was missing the entire point of 75 hard. And so the day I realized that, I started, and then I went through a whole bunch of celebrations without alcohol and realized that I can have fun without alcohol. And now the physical benefit for me of that is that, yes, I have a cocktail once a week or so, but I'm not drinking every day. And the alcohol was hurting me. I think that's part of why my blood work is better, is the diet and the alcohol being gone, because that's just sugar in your system.
Right. Yeah. Gosh darn it, man. It's like, I think people really just overlook the value of their health, and if you're taking and you're doing a challenge like this, and that's what you take away from it, is how much it can benefit you from a health standpoint, because that's one of the best preps you'll ever have is your health.
Yeah.
Being healthy, being strong, being flexible, being able to live healthy, that's the best prep you'll ever have. So I think that's really awesome that you've taken, that from the challenge that you've just done, and are continuing on with it. It's super good. Yeah.
Well, and
So
I'm thankful I stumbled on it, because I know John Willis had talked about, I don't even know who I heard about it from, but I know it was MT Brand. A friend of mine did it earlier in the year, and I was watching him post every day, and I thought, oh, I got to check that out. So it was just from somebody else posting pictures every day.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, that's super cool. You're somebody who's really busy. Obviously, you've got many different irons in the fire as an entrepreneur, and you're going in a lot of different directions. And we were just talking about time management. So how is it that you find the best ways to manage your time from your 24 hours? How do you juggle it all, and what are some of your tips for time management?
Some days are better than others for me. So I have the entrepreneur disease, where new ideas are exciting and I want to try everything and do everything that I could. Every time I hear something new, it's like, yes. And what that means is that what I'm doing now primarily is my podcast, Living Free in Tennessee, the Self-Reliance Festival, which is twice a year. And you've been to it. We get a lot of people there. And then I do roast and ship coffee for Holler Roast Coffee. I live on a homestead, so we have gardens and food preservation. We're probably up to about 90% food is eaten here that's either from here or other local sources. And that's with intention since 2020. But all of that takes time. And I'd like to occasionally sit around and read a fiction novel from time to time, or swim laps or something. So I have found time management very difficult. And it's funny that you ask it, because I've developed a method where I have stated my big picture vision for my life, or my purpose in this world, and then backed it out to three big picture things I'm working on. One is financial, one is about developing community, and one is about personal health. And then from there, I have sub goals for 12 to 18 months under those categories. And then each day, when I look at what I have to do for the day, I choose three things that I call my three things. And those are the three do or die things for my day. Some days there's only one three thing, we like to say. Some days it's, like there were a couple of times during 75 hard that successfully doing 75 hard was the only thing that mattered that day. It doesn't mean that you only do those three things, but the idea is you never have more than three do or die things a day, all that are linked to your big picture plan and moving the ball forward, so that you don't get into that sort of priority paralysis analysis thing where you do everything 10% and nothing all the way. And I am this close to finishing the book on that. I'm flying somewhere next week to finish the book on my three things. I started writing it, wrote 75% of it, and now I have to read the whole thing again to finish the last 25%.
Right. Now, with your three things, do you start with the easy thing first, or do you start with the hard thing first?
It depends on the day and what the thing is. I usually do the thing I want to do least first. Because once it's done, I don't worry about it. And we call that eating a frog. And I'm sure somebody else came up with that idea. Somebody in my network said, I got to eat this frog today. And it was like pay their bills or something. And I was like, oh, I love that phrase. So when there's something that you really don't want to do, like I didn't want to plant my beets. There's nothing terrible about planting beets, but I've been talking about planting beets for 2 weeks. And Sunday, I had my first day off in a while and was canning beans and doing other things. And those beets just like were on my mind all day long, slowing me down. And finally, I just went outside and planted the dang beets. And it took me 5 minutes to plant the beets that I had been worrying about for 6 hours.
Yeah.
6 hours. I'm worrying about stupid beets. And so that's, if there's anything on my mind like that, man, do it first. Or if there's something you really don't want to do, like taxes. I hate taxes. I hate doing my taxes. In fact, that's first on my list tomorrow. Do them. Because one, A, it takes way less time than you think it's going to take. And B, all of that time you worried about it, your brain could have been like designing a really cool show or writing a new song or anything better than worrying about planting stupid beets.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that I do sometimes, and I don't always do this, I don't have a schedule for doing this. It's just one of those things that like starts to eat at you, because I'm sure you can walk around your property and you're always looking at something you got to do, right? You're like, I got to deal with that. I got to deal with that. Everywhere you walk, there's something I got to put that away, right? Some of it only takes 2 seconds, but you always like, you walk by it sometimes. And so sometimes I'll say, today's the day I got to just go out and get all those little things that I just see that need to be done. And it's like you're just running around, oh, I'll roll that hose up, or I'll put that tool away, or I'll do this, or I'll do that. And it's just like all those little things that aren't big and don't take a lot of time, but they start to add up, right?
Yes. So that's referred to as Operation Eyesore around here. We are in bad need of an Operation Eyesore right now. There is clutter everywhere outside, and it's on a cycle too. And it's not like a schedule, but today I said, okay, so we've got to declutter outside, which is Operation Eyesore. And it's always just like that hose you never rolled up. And then other times when I'm like with it, I make future Nicole happy by doing it right at that moment. And every so often I'll realize, oh, I did that for future Nicole. That's great. She's going to be so happy, because otherwise future Nicole gets very frustrated when things are not where they're supposed to be. Yeah. But it's funny how we have these little personalities inside that are in conflict all the time with stuff like that.
Yep. Are you still doing carnivore? Are you carnivore, or are you just doing keto? Or
ketovore. So I eat vegetables and meat, pretty much only, no processed foods, no grains, very low carb. And if it's growing in my garden and seasonal and a carb, I can eat it. So when blueberries came on, we ate blueberries. When strawberries came on, we ate strawberries. If my peach tree had given me a peach, I'd have eaten it, but it did not. So that was not a challenge I had to face.
Right. Do you try to count your carbs?
I don't count them every day. I was counting them on 75 hard. It's not very hard for me to stay under the carb count if I don't eat seeds, basically, or potatoes.
Yeah, I tried. I talked to Ken Berry when I was out at Self-Reliance, and I had mentioned to him that I tried doing the ketovore thing. I tried being keto, and, I was going okay. I felt all right. And then what I realized is like, man, I just did not have any energy for my runs,
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, I just was like, I wasn't like fat adapted in my runs to the point where, I just had no glycogen in my liver, because it just wasn't processing those carbs. And it just was hard for me. So I wound up kind of going off of it and gave it up and stuff. But, he had told me that would be something that would take some time to develop. And I just wasn't patient enough to like put in the work of just eating that way strictly, because I burn a tremendous amount of calories with, when I'm training for a race or running or whatever. So it just didn't work for me. But I was just interested to know how that's been going for you.
It's been going really well. And I think it's part of why why I'm feeling better, because I was cheating a lot before, and wheat in particular makes me not feel good.
Yeah. I could totally see how it would make a person feel better, for sure. cutting out certain things that their body just doesn't agree with. Again, it takes that discipline and it takes that desire to be able to be strong enough to say, hey, I'm going to give up on that bread, or I'm not going to have the potatoes, or I'm not going to have those things that are high in carbs, even though we've been led to believe throughout our lives that, oh, that's part of the 4 food groups. That's healthy. That's what you're supposed to eat.
Yeah.
And Skane's girl says she's going to be trying a carnivore, doing kind of an elimination diet to try to get her gut right. So I imagine that's what the carnivore diet or ketovore will do for a person, right?
It can really help with that. And the thing is, you do have to give yourself time to transition to doing well off of that. And what most people do wrong is they don't eat enough fat. My mother was starving on an elimination diet where she basically had to go to meat. And the problem was she was eating white chicken breast and a tiny, tiny amount of leafy greens. And that was it. And white chicken breast doesn't have any fat. So when she comes to see me, she eats like I do because that's what's for dinner. And I mentioned maybe it was, like maybe breakfast sausage with some fat and it would help. And she tried it while she was here and she said, yep, I'm not hungry all the time, because she was just hungry all the time when she was out of not having carbs. And so she'd have to like run out and find rice. Well, her doctor didn't want her eating rice because they were trying to figure out why she had inflammation.
Well, why do you think, and I don't know if you've given this much thought or whatever, but I was wondering, why do you think that they've, for years, have come out and said that fat is bad for you and it's going to cause arterial sclerosis and it's going to, do all these things bad and detrimental to your health, but that really doesn't seem to hold true for those that are eating a meat-based or one high in fat? That doesn't seem to hold true. I mean, there's many populations, indigenous peoples, that eat a very high fat diet and are very, very healthy. And now I suppose it depends on the fats that you're consuming, but nonetheless, why do you think fat has gotten such a bad rap?
I don't even begin to understand why. What I know is that as a result of the low fat revolution in the 80s, we went from whole foods to processed foods in the form of fake butter and, fat-free this with lots of sugar and cornstarch and a lot of synthetic foods. So the thing I think is, where is the money? So follow the money. Is the money coming from the sugar lobby? Is it coming from the corn lobby? Like, who is influencing the recommendations of diet? Because I think that has a very big impact on the zeitgeist of what is good for us. And it's interesting to see now the resurgence of actually fat might be good for you after all coming out, where they were blaming it on, they were blaming fat for clogged arteries and heart problems. And now they're finding the opposite to be more the standard. I don't know that true is anything that you say in any of these questions, because you have to ask, is that really what it is? And it could have just started with a doctor seeing what looked like fat clogging arteries and said, well, if you eat fat, your arteries get clogged. I mean, it could have been as innocent as that. But I also think that scientists have known that sugar impacts inflammation in the body for a very long time.
Yeah. I think there's probably a lot of truth to what you say, that there's always seemingly some form of corporate money behind the decisions that are put forth in public policy, and what the government wants to put out there to people and the message that they want to promote. So I think that the marketing aspect to that is probably right in line with really why that happened, why they targeted fat. I don't know. Skane's girl has a nice conspiratorial, and I'm not saying that she's not right on this either. There may be something to it, but she says, of course, they want to limit the fat. That's what makes your brain work properly.
Yeah.
So yeah, it could be a lot of different things, but it's interesting. If the next time, what I want you guys to do, the next time you go to the store, just look down the aisles and just look at all the bright colors and all the marketing. It's freaking amazing, man. Like all that packaged bullshit they're selling to you, and it's just garbage. And so by you growing 90% of your food, I think that's a pretty awesome thing. So you are actually getting 90% of what you consume there currently, from local
I'm
sources and what you
growing
can
and sourcing locally. Yeah. So we don't grow cows here, but I buy a cow every year.
Yeah.
The things I buy are specialty items like chocolate, which is totally sugar and not good for you, but boy, is it delicious.
Yeah.
And I buy some sauces. Like I will use a fermented mushroom sauce that's a soy sauce, but not made with soybeans, and some things like that, right? And then the rest of it comes from here or from nearby, and we preserve it with canning or the freeze dryer or freezing or drying and build that into our meals. And part of why that came to be was that we had all the supply chain disruptions going on. And I buy like salt and vinegar and some basics like that.
Sure.
And then because I don't eat grain, I don't need to buy breads or flours or any of those things because we don't grow wheat on the homestead here, or corn or anything like that. It's too small for that to be even feasible. So it just sort of naturally happened because of the supply chain disruptions. I was like, screw it. I know how to can food. I will just can all the food. And then once you have all the food canned, you can either eat the food you can or you're just wasting food. And I don't like to waste food because grandma, who grew up in the Depression, taught me not to do that. So we just started cooking that way, and then we felt better. And then I got further and further into the ketovore lifestyle, and that means meat. And so, we can grow chickens, we have rabbits, we have sheep, we source cows from off the homestead, and we had pigs. I'm still eating pigs from our pigs. So by that time, you've covered all your meat bases. There's no reason to go to the store and buy meat. Right. And then I started learning to make, sausages and bacon and stuff like that.
Are you going to continue to stay with the ketovore? You're digging that? It's working for you?
Yeah, I have no intention of going off ketovore. I am now allowing myself the occasional piece of birthday cake now that I'm not on 75 hard. But I make a choice every week if it's going to be alcohol or something that's high carb, because they're the same level of poison to me. And so, doing it all together is a bad idea. It's like, it's a bad night.
Right. Yeah.
So that's, and that's just me. That's anybody who makes any dietary decision for themselves. I have no judgment about it. It has made me feel markedly better and lose weight. I'm 25 pounds down from my highest number, and I intend to go down a little bit more over time. And that diet change being a lifestyle change has helped me avoid the rubber band of back and forth.
Yeah, that's really good. I'm admire you for being able to be that disciplined. It's not an easy thing to do. Food is a very powerful drug, if you will. I mean, it's something that we think about all the time, and it's hard to discipline yourself away from those things that give you pleasure. And food is definitely one of those things that does that. So kudos to you on that.
Well, I will admit that my chocolate is stored next door at the Tactical Rednecks refrigerator. And when I want chocolate bar, I ask him for a chocolate bar. I cannot store chocolate bars in my house. So I had to learn not to have the things in my house that I can't eat. And so if you're like, it's midnight snack time, it's like, well, there's a steak, there's cucumbers, I do keep some nuts around. So there's macadamia nuts, but it's a lot easier when you're not looking at a closet full of Captain Crunch or something.
Yeah.
Going, oh, I have to say no to that. It's just not an option. I got to drive 35 minutes to get anything. It's not worth it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Skanes
All right,
girl.
Skanes girl, do it.
Yeah, that's good. You should give that a go and let us know, because it's something that I've always, I guess it's, again, I'm just making excuses. If I really wanted to do it, I would do it, but I'm not disciplined enough in my dietary choices to go out and to physically do that for any length of time to see what the results would wind up being. Would I feel better? Would I have less inflammation in certain areas? Would I don't know. It's one of those things that it takes discipline in order to do. And I was able to do that years ago when I lost like 30 pounds. When I allowed myself to get a little heavier than I normally am. And I decided to discipline myself, and I lost the weight. And it's hard, but it's certainly something you can do. I just don't know, with regard to ketovore, how much better possibly I would feel. Now, again, it's not going to work when I'm running high mileage, but yeah, it's good on you. Let us know how that turns out. I'm interested.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to say something to A. Ray Pierre there, where he had to tell his wife to quit to get soda out of the house. And this is something that it's hard to have a conversation with your spouse about when you need to cut out something that they like to eat. And whether it's Pop-Tarts or chocolate bars or popcorn or soda drinks or whatever it is, I think if you find that it's harmful to your health to have that thing in the house and your spouse really likes it, you have to have a conversation like you're an alcoholic, because it is the same. I watched Tactical kick an alcohol addiction, and I watched him going through all of the levels of having to say no to beer and all of that. And we stopped drinking here while he was doing that so that he wouldn't see people drinking. For me, it's the same with chocolate. Like if Tactical walked in eating chocolate bars every day, that would be hard for me to watch. I can get over it, right? I mean, now I'm okay, but having that support from your family makes a huge difference when you go into a dietary change. And I think a lot of how failure is set up in something where you need the food discipline is your kids still have the cookies in the house, or your spouse still has the cookies in the house. And then eventually you just eat the stupid cookie. And if for 6 months they just not have it in the house and leave the house and go eat their cookies next door or whatever they got to do, that can be the difference between success and failure, I think, on the family level. And when I think about what families should do for each other, it's actually a relatively small ask. Let's all quit cookies for 6 months so I can lose weight, please.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to get diabetes and die, and you don't want that, right?
That's a super important point. You need to have the support from all areas, and particularly the ones closest to you. If it's right there and it's readily available and they're eating it in front of you, it makes it a lot more hard to adhere to whatever it is you're trying to do. So yeah, that's a really important point, Nicole.
Yeah. And I think it's a hard conversation to have with your spouse in a way that is loving. You know what I mean? Where it's like, because then they feel like you're judging them for drinking the soda, but you're not. You're like, I just can't see it, or I'll do it, Yeah.
Yeah. I think that bread thing is a big one for a lot of people. I love bread.
Yeah.
I like eating sandwiches, and that's one of probably the worst things that you can actually eat.
I love bread too.
Yeah.
And occasionally I slather it with butter and I have some bread, but I got to really just make that decision.
Like some sourdough right out of the,
yeah.
Yeah. Right.
My neighbor though found this recipe with almond flour that makes biscuits. It's almond flour, cheese, and eggs and some other stuff. And they taste like bread. And it's lower carb. You can't eat a lot of those either. It's 4 carbs per one, but yeah.
Does it have is it like a gluten-free thing or whatever? Because I think gluten's the thing that kind of messes people up, ain't it?
It is. Yeah, it is gluten-free. With wheat, I don't know if it's the gluten messing me up or not. I just know that my joints get inflamed if I eat wheat now.
Right.
When I was in Europe, though, if I ate wheat there, they did not. So I feel like it's something to do with the American grain. Because I can go to Germany and eat their bread, no problem. It's very weird. It's very weird.
Yeah.
So, but this is, a lot of gluten-free recipes will be lower carb too.
Right. Hey, so what's new on the homestead for you? You got any big plans? Do you you going to be putting in any new animals, new infrastructure? What do you got planned coming up?
What's new on the homestead? There's always something new on the homestead. What's new is that Cece wants out, Tactical, if you're listening. Anyway, I've got a dog in here like going, whoa. We just did sheep last year, and that was a heavy lift for us to add here because the sheep came and then the rain stopped for like months. And so we did not grow grass. And we thought we would rotate them in a much smaller area than we did. And I'm sorry about the background noise. Hopefully Tactical hears. If he comes up, she can go out.
He's in the chat.
Yeah.
He's there.
Yeah. So I don't think we're doing a big lift right now. We just put solar in on one of the buildings and we're finishing out a lot of things. But we incubated ducks and I declared them all female.
Huh.
And I was wrong. They are all male.
What kind of ducks?
They are khaki Campbells, and usually their legs are orange if they're male, but they were black. And unfortunately, I called it wrong because their legs just turned orange this week. So now I have 4 million male ducks, and I've just ordered 20 female ducks because we want the eggs. So we're going to have like 80 ducks here.
Wow. What are you doing with all the ducks? You selling them?
I will process the males for food. And we have duck eggs. My plan is to have a farm stand at the end of my driveway for the extra duck eggs. Because we're close to a marina where people come who can afford houseboats, so they can afford duck eggs. And we're going to advertise over there and just see what happens.
Honor system, they just...
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
But we're not, I think at this point, we may add a barn up by the goats for meat, more of a meat-focused duck flock, and nothing crazy. Mm-hmm. Nothing crazy. It's just a little bit at a time this year. Last year, we overcommitted pretty majorly. And so I feel like the next 12 months is finishing all of the things we started. And didn't quite finish, like the perimeter fence and that barn and like maybe a shed for my firewood, stuff like that.
Huh. Rebecca just popped in with a question. I'll have to hit you with that in a minute, but
she should pop on.
Yeah, she just stepped away, but she asked what was your favorite stroke to swim? She was a swimmer too. She swam in college and high school and all that. So what was your favorite stroke?
My favorite stroke to swim was breaststroke when I was racing, but they always had me doing backstroke and crawl because I'm faster at those. Like people who are really good at breaststroke can swim faster than me in that way. And now I do a lot of crawl when I'm working out and a little bit of backstroke. If the pool doesn't have like the flags that are about 15 feet from the end, then I don't trust myself to backstroke because I'll hit my head.
Yeah.
So that's always the sort of the challenge there. But I like all of it. I love being in the water swimming laps, which seems absurd. It's probably like running is boring, like swimming is boring, but it's not for me.
Right.
And I'm sure running isn't boring for you, but people think of it as boring because you're just going back and forth and back and forth. But I go into this almost meditative state when I do that. Everything goes away.
Yeah, running's very much the same for me because when you're doing something that's not really that difficult, when it's not hard, unless you're pushing yourself, you're just kind of you're just clicking away. You're just kind of, your mind is just wandering and miles are clicking away. And it's an enjoyment, therapeutic time to spend alone, really. And so that's, I guess people don't understand it, but that's how I can best describe it. And I'm sure it's probably somewhat similar for you, no?
Yeah, that's exactly it. The only thing I'm thinking about in the water is how many more lengths I'm going to swim. So there's a number in my head to keep me focused. Every so often I forget the number, but then I just repeat the number, that the last number I remembered.
Right.
But then at that point, my brain wanders off into other places, and I can think about things that I may not make time to think about at other times of the day.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just really nice for me. And it's physically, I think when you get sort of the endorphin rush from that, it also releases a lot of the aggravation of the day. And I think that's very important. That's part of why working out consistently on 75 hard has been important for me, because I am way less stressed out now than I used to be.
Yeah.
Because that stress isn't like right there all the time. It's like I worked out so hard, it had to go. It just had to go somewhere. So it's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah. Yep. It's a very good sedative for sleeping at night. If you're physically tired, you're going to be less anxious, and you're just going to, it's just good. It's just a good thing for people to do. Not everybody has made time in their day to carve out something physical for themselves. But what I always try to tell people is, you don't have to run, you don't have to swim, but find something that suits you. If you like to hike, you like to go and take a walk, you like to stretch, you like to do Pilates, you like to do anything that's physical, find that which you enjoy and go do it. It's personal.
Yeah. And the act of making time to do something physical is you deciding to prioritize your health every single day. And that is a healthy attitude to take about yourself. It's actually healthier to say no to a bunch of the crap that people want you to do so that you can work out or stretch or whatever it is, because you're prioritizing your health. And just the act of doing that, I think, it's an attitude change in your brain that affects your body positively.
Yeah.
And we're taught not to prioritize ourselves.
Yeah. I don't know why we were taught that, but it should be a priority in my opinion.
Yes.
Yeah. You've got the St. Croix sheep, no?
Yes, we have St. Croix. I have 2 Katahdins as well.
Okay. What are you feeding them?
Grass.
Are they just eating grass, or are you giving them?
We do. Okay, so we do buy Timothy pellets for them that they get at the end of each day. And in the winter, they get hay, and then there's supplemental vitamins that come in. But we don't feed them grains. It's all just we rotate them once a week now. They were rotating about every 3 days last year, but they're rotating once a week onto new pasture. The pasture has been improving since they've been through a few times.
And are you running in electro netting, or how are you paddocking them?
It's right now it's 3 strands of electric wire and step-in posts, which the netting wouldn't work here because of our topography. It's pretty steep.
Oh, right.
And it's not great.
Do you have a lot of, you have green grass in the summer, right? You guys get summer rains and grass keeps coming.
It's been so great this summer. It's rained twice a week like clockwork all summer long, and except for 1 4-week period of time. So this year, it hasn't been great for hay production, but it's been great for grass production, and food has not been an issue. Last year, they were clearing it for the first time, so it was not the best quality anyway. And then it wasn't raining. I do have fodder trees in as well to pollard. And so we have the box elder that grows here, they love. It's like sheep crack. And then we have hybrid willow, hybrid poplar, and I have a couple of mulberry trees. And all of those we can cut and give them that fresh from the tree, or we can dry it for winter, which I'm not producing enough to bother drying for winter. But those are all nutritionally like high in protein and really good for ruminants.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really cool. I'm just now, I haven't fed mine since they've been here, and we don't have green grass, but we've got a lot of brown dry grass, and they're getting acclimated to finding out what it's like to eat what they've been given. And they're starting to actually like really look forward to, and they're flourishing on it. They look fine. They're in good condition. But it was a transition for them because I think they were getting fed quite a bit when I bought them from the folks. They were giving them oats and alfalfa, and they didn't really have a lot of pasture, so to speak. They had maybe like an acre, and it was just, it was down to cue ball. They didn't really have anything to eat, so they were feeding them, feedlotting them.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been running them in a tractor since they've been here, and they haven't had one flake of hay yet. So
that's good.
Yeah, they're doing okay. I got 2 Katahdin and 2 Dorpers, 1 ram, 1 Katahdin.
So are sheep new for you this year, or were you already doing them?
Yeah, no, we have never run sheep here, and it's primarily just been because of the predator issue. I just didn't want to deal with predators. But once I built that sheep tractor, I mean, it's pretty secure. So I feel good about having them out there, and I don't have to try to run livestock guardian dogs and add another element to it. It's just I just run them in that tractor.
Yeah.
But it's something new for us as well.
Yeah, we have livestock guardian dogs here, and we're just transitioning those guys to a raw diet.
Gonna do the rabbits.
I have a freezer full of bags of furry rabbits because you just give them the whole rabbit. So, yeah.
That's probably a pretty good way to go from a sustainability standpoint. And your rabbits are producing for you?
They are. It took me a year to figure that out. And this is the thing about homesteading. Like, what's really easy to grow are rabbits. Fail safe. Everybody's like, you're a new homesteader, you should start with rabbits. Rabbits reproduce on their own. Not for Nicole Sauce, they don't. No, they spend a year eating food and getting really too fat to reproduce, which was the problem. I was overfeeding them. And then every time you think it's time for more bunnies, there's no more bunnies. So then I did some more research and realized if your rabbits are overweight, they cannot reproduce, which was my doing. And so the feed got cut back. And now we have no problems. And we get, 8 to 12 bunnies per litter pretty much on a 6 to 8 week cycle.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty outstanding.
So I went from no bunnies to, oh my goodness, we have too many bunnies. We need to start feeding these bunnies to the dogs.
Yeah, that's something I had thought would be a really good idea. I know John does that, and I know you were trying to do it. So it's a really good thing to feed your dog as healthily as you can, because a lot of that kibble is kind of not so good, and the stuff that's really good for them is really expensive.
Yes, it is.
So finding a way
LGDs are big and they eat a lot.
Oh yeah, I imagine so. So hey, we're getting a little bit down to the wire here, but I like asking folks, given all that's been going on recently, and I'm sure you kind of keep your ear a little bit to what's happening out there in the world and locally and abroad. What concerns you most about the future? What's your biggest concern?
Biggest concern
is
probably not what you're going to expect to hear, how we're going to navigate the next 10 years of economic downturn. So I'm less worried about the New World Order and the World Economic Forum and all of those things that are trying to be tyrannical, top-down, terrible things, and more worried about how we're going to respond to what we cannot avoid, which is economic distress. We are already in it, and it's going to get worse. I think it's going to get worse. And that then becomes a tool of manipulation by taking people in their time of pain and flipping them over to do what you want in exchange for having less pain, right? That's how we manipulate populations. I'm worried because we are the less fit and the least healthy that we've been as a local society and worldwide. And that means we're less resilient when hardship hits. And I think hardship is going to hit. I try to make decisions based on, I pretend I'm in the 70s right now. It's like, do I need to do this with my money? Well, what worked in the 70s when all of that inflationary time happened? Late 70s, early 80s. I try to make decisions that way rather than worrying about what's happening with the economy from a catastrophic standpoint. because when we make decisions in fear, it doesn't help us. Doesn't help us make the right decision. But at the same time, I see I see what the grocery store bills are doing to people. I see the looks because I've gone back into stores now. When I'm on the road, I go to the store and I buy groceries, and people look worried, and their bills have gone. A $20 grocery bill is now $80, and that's not sustainable. And I think that's happening in a lot of sectors across the way. So I guess that's the thing that worries me the most, is how people are going to navigate that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's funny you say that. That's not what I would expect. That's almost exactly what I would have expected, because I'm of the same belief that I think economically that's one of the biggest challenges that we face as a country, as a nation, because at some point there will be a reckoning of our system, and it's going to be reworked and it's going to be retooled. And I think they're pushing for that day, so that there's no desire to make it go away. There's no desire to pay any of this debt down. They just keep running it up. So what does that tell people? I mean, it's unsustainable. So
Yeah.
at some point it will collapse, and then what's going to happen? Because obviously they're going to rush in with a solution, and people are going to be unprepared in a sense, and they're going to be vulnerable, and they're going to accept what is placed before them. That's just how it works. And so I think that that's exactly correct. Yeah, I'm interested.
It's funny though, because objectively, let's look at our country. How many resources do we have? Do we have enough for everybody? Yes. We are still a very prosperous country. We have plenty of food. We have plenty of water. Sure, there are places where there are more or less of those things. There's plenty of land. There's plenty of energy. And yet, we're heading towards this place where scarcity may happen because of stupid policies that we've let happen.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of scarcity because we've been conditioned to be so dependent on the system. And I know that it's very difficult for any one of us to step away from the system. You just can't do it. You're tied to it. But the more that you can do to produce your own food, produce your own energy, produce all the things that you actually need to continue a certain standard of living, if we can take control of those things more than allowing others to provide it for us, when that day comes, we'll be a lot better prepared to deal with it.
I mean, that's part of the impetus behind the Self-Reliance Festival, which is an event that I host in Camden, Tennessee twice a year. We have it coming October 14th and 15th, is to get people exposed to heritage skills and to making different financial decisions and making different everyday decisions, so that they have the skills they need if they need the skills. And if they don't need the skills, then they have those skills, or are able to use those skills in a way that still build more prosperity in their life in the long run. Because sure, I can run in the woods and live in a tent and hardly need anything, right? Until I get really sick. But let's just pretend that's not there. But if I have that skill, if I have the skill to grow some food, or if I understand how fibers work and I can knit a sweater, then if China isn't importing a gajillion sweaters one winter, it may not be the prettiest sweater. In fact, it'll probably be horribly misshapen, but I can still be warm.
Yeah. So talk about self-reliance a little bit, if you will. Talk about who's coming and what's going to be on the docket.
Well, it's going to be the best one ever, Porterhouse. The only one that's going to be better than this one is the one next March that hopefully you're speaking at again. But we've got Joel Salatin coming in. And part of why I wanted him to come in is he sees what's coming, and he sees positive ways to navigate through what's coming, and he shares them with you in a way that's entertaining. So he's going to talk about homesteading and homesteading, like using those skills anywhere to make your life better. We've got Jack Spirko coming in, and he's going to talk about something you're not expecting, and that's artificial intelligence. Because AI is happening, and there are people who hate it and people who love it. So I asked him, like, talk about AI, about why we might want to learn about it so we understand how it impacts our life. I am looking for somebody to debate him who hates AI, who has enough knowledge to be able to debate Jack Spirko. So I don't know if that debate will happen or not, but if it will, it will. We've got Bruce DeVries coming in and showing us how to trap small game as well as make biochar. We've got Dana McClendon coming in talking about, he's going to actually talk about some girl gun issues, because we're doing Girl Gun Weekend in a couple weeks, and a lot of women are hesitant to train with their firearms. And I think if you're going to have a firearm, it's very important to know how to use it and in what situation you should use it. I mean, the thing they teach you first at Tactical Response is maybe if you don't go do stupid things in stupid places with stupid people and end up in stupid situations, you don't need it, right? Mm-hmm. And they always refer to the they refer to gas stations as the stop and rob, which always makes me laugh. So we're going to have some things along those lines. We've got weavers coming in and highlighting weaving. I mean, there's a ton. There's more this time than there's ever been. We're doing chicken processing on Monday with Joel Salatin, so it's an extra add-on class. We've got Evan Dixon doing a ham radio course right before. I've got Homestead Medical. It's Chuck Peoples. He's coming in and talking about advanced wound care. So once you've helped somebody who's wounded stop the bleed, so they're going to live, now you got to keep them alive, which means keep them from getting infected. I used those skills with Tactical's head last month because he got a huge gash in his head putting a T-post in and refused to go to the emergency room. So I had to scrub his head, which he loved, I'm sure. But we kept him from getting infected. It worked. So these are all things that they pay off in real life, but they're also really fun to learn. And I think the one I'm most looking forward to, we're going to talk about this Thursday at 7 on my YouTube channel. I've got Renegade Butcher and Backwoods Butcher coming in, and they're having a face-to-face butcher off at the event. Yeah, nice. So it's going to be a big old contest. So we're going to start talking some smack about that this week. But yeah. So yeah, all of these things, that's all self-reliancefestival.com, guys, if you want to learn more.
Yeah, right on. It's interesting you say that I wouldn't expect AI, because I actually didn't expect Jack to be speaking about that, but that's actually my other thing that I think is on the horizon that's actually a real concern, as it should be. It's going to be ever present. There's going to be a lot of people losing their jobs over being replaced by things that are being now done by the internet. I just think it's a big concern, and it's something that people should see coming, because I don't think at any time in history, I don't think we could see as far forward as we can see now. And it's right there for us if we just want to open our eyes and go, oh, wow, gee, guess what? My job that I went to school for and invested all this time and money to go to college for, it's going to be done by a computer. Nobody back in the day saw that coming, but you can see it coming now. And I just think that people need to recognize that and start preparing themselves, because it is something that is coming. It's not going away. And an interesting thing was this, I don't know if you recall, not too long ago, a few weeks back, they had the writer's strike remember those people?
Yeah.
They're all out there crying about, the scripts are going to be written by a computer. Well, guess what? It's going to be.
It's going to be.
Yeah. If your job can be done by AI, it's going to be done by AI, because they don't have to pay for human resources department. They don't have to pay for healthcare. They don't have to pay for all this other stuff. So it's
coming, and the people who will successfully keep jobs will know how to use it to keep their jobs.
Yeah.
And that's hard when you're used to doing your job the way you do your job. Like, I'm a teacher. I teach people things. I taught a canning class last weekend, and I've taught many canning classes. And I went into last weekend's canning class, and I was seeing my dad last week before the class, and he hasn't really seen AI work. And I was like, well, let me show you something. And I wrote a 3-sentence prompt for ChatGPT to write me a class outline for my canning class. And I hit enter, and it within a minute had a reasonable canning class outline that, because I know the material, I could fix the 2 errors that were in it, move some things around. And I was like, that is what AI is doing right now. That is free AI. That's not even something somebody's paid for. So like, think about what that means. And, he said the S word, he said OS word. And because he hadn't seen it work before, and it was just done. And it was it was a pretty good outline. I actually ended up using it. I was like, I'll use that, see how it goes.
Right. Yeah. Bruce says, I'm glad that AI can't do leather work.
Yet, Bruce, yet.
Yeah, yet. I mean, if they're making things with 3D printers, guns and all kinds of things with 3D printers, leathers, it's nice that people have that craft, and it's something that will always be cherished, is having a handmade craft from someone. But yet is definitely the word that needs to be injected into that.
Well, and that's the other thing, is there is an opportunity, if you're really good at something like leatherworking or some of these other heritage skills, where you probably could make a lot of money from the people who are willing to pay a lot of money for the thing that is handmade and not mimicked by the robots.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
But that's a very narrow market. So, and that's why I asked Jack to talk about that topic, is because he's got a good way of explaining to folks who are either not wanting to mess with it because it's yet another new thing I have to learn, or who are worried that if they interact with AI, it's going to corrupt them. His approach is that we'd better learn how it works so we see how to do it ethically. Otherwise, the unethical people are going to use it against us anyway.
Right.
And so it's going to be an interesting discussion. There's going to be a lot of opinions on that one at the event, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Which is good. I like a good debate.
Yeah. Are you going to be making any other appearances where people might find you?
I will be speaking at the Midwest Preparedness Project in Kansas, which is the first weekend of October, and I believe it's midwestpreparednessproject.com. I'll be talking about the 15-minute homestead. So the concept behind that is how to line out different projects in 5 to 15 minutes segments so that you can balance busy life with homestead. And that's the next one. And then I'll be speaking at Jack Spirko's event in the first weekend of November.
I thought he already had his event. Does he have 2 a year now?
Oh, he had a 15-year anniversary celebration, but he has a 3-year workshop. Tickets go for sale mid-September for that at thesurvivalpodcast.com.
Right.
And then from there, we are into busy coffee roasting season, and I will be roasting coffee and singing classical music with my choir in preparation for Christmas, because it always happens that there are events in December people want me to speak at, and I'm like, listen, I'm singing Vivaldi's Gloria, and there's no compromise there.
Are you going to be down in Kentucky at Jason's event?
I am not going to be at Kentucky Sustainable Living this time because I will already be in Dallas at Jack's event.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I hope next. So we actually, all of us Kentucky Sustainable Living, Midwest Preparedness Project, and Self-Reliance Festival, we all got together and looked at the calendar for next year and scheduled it so that our events are not conflicting, because we're working together as part of the Great American Preparedness Tour, where you can just go from one event to the next. and check them all out. They've all been really awesome to work with. This year we ended up a little bit on top of each other, and we've decided, okay, it's better to have about 2 weeks between the festivals. We have, I think in the spring it's going to be 1 week between SRF and the Kentucky event. But other than that, I think we're pretty 2 weeks apart from each other.
Right. I am going to be down there in Kentucky. That's going to be October 27th through 29th. And I'll be teaching a class, how to put in a fruit tree guild, and sharing some other ideas on growing soil and establishing a food forest, and just other permaculture tactics. And that class is going to be on the Friday before the festival. The festival itself is going to be Saturday and Sunday, which is 28th, 29th. But the 27th, the Friday, is going to be a paid class. And I put a link in the description for anybody that might want to check that out. But it's a small class limited to 30 people. And we're going to spend some time in the morning doing some classroom work, and then your cost of admission will provide lunch. And then we'll go out after lunch to a site that was locally established food forest from last year that was planted. So you'll kind of get the chance to see what you may expect, some similar results if we do something similar out at that site. So, I hope to get an opportunity to come down your way and visit with you guys again.
Yep. I was going to invite you to come to my house after the Kentucky Sustainable Living one, but then I realized I won't be here. So you're totally welcome to come through, but I won't be here.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. We'll have to definitely tie in there again for sure.
But that class sounds really cool, guys. And when he says only 30 tickets, what that means is if you're thinking you want to take a plant guild class and you are going to be in Kentucky the Friday before the 28th, so the 27th, then I highly recommend going to KentuckySustainableLiving.com right now and getting your spot. Because when those classes tend to fill up, and it's sad when you wait too long and then you don't get to go to the class you wanted to go to.
Right. Yeah. One of the things you talked about, I think it was like either last year or the year before, that I really enjoyed. And I hope you speak a little bit more on this particular subject, but you did a presentation at Jack's workshop on underground networking. And I think that is something that should not be underestimated. The value of networking with people, establishing relationships in real life, not just over the internet, because you are largely responsible, whether you know this or not, but you are largely responsible for me deciding to get a ticket to SRF and drive from California to Tennessee to meet some people because of what you said one day, which was just that you can have relationships on the internet and you think that those relationships are valid. And I'm not saying that they're invalid. I'm just saying you take it to the next level when you have a chance to actually sit down with somebody and meet them in person in real life. So if you guys are at all thinking about going to SRF, if you're thinking about going to Kentucky, if you're thinking of going to the Midwest Preparedness Project, again, take the time to invest in yourself and try to establish some of those relationships beyond just the internet.
Yeah, I did not know that's why you showed up. I thought you just wanted to see Jack Spirko.
No, Jack's an asshole. I didn't want to. No.
See, asshole is good in my book. When I call you an asshole, that's a good thing.
That's right.
It means you know boundaries.
Yeah.
It's underground networking. That's something I do give talks on the regular basis at different events, because people always ask, how do I build my community? And anybody who's in the comments right now, you're already building community. You already have your community. The question is, how are you strengthening the community you have by establishing trust and getting together and being able to have conversations in person that we wouldn't necessarily have on YouTube? Like, that happens. I don't even know what the conversation is about right now. I have nothing in mind, but there's something I won't say here that I will say in person because it's just two different things. And then, and watching those hubs come together are great. That's why, I mean, it's great that you linked up with Jason and everybody, and that's a whole other event that just started, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
They're just, I mean, I asked you before when you're going to start one in your area, and you said that's not your calling, but I'm saying it on your show in case somebody else wants to start one near you, because I bet that Porterhouse would be like, yes, we have an event. I don't have to coordinate. Right on.
Yeah, I'll be there.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. That's super cool. Well, hey, we're getting down to the end here, Nicole. I don't want to keep you much longer than what I've already done. I think it's pretty gracious of you to come on at this late hour, given the fact you're a couple hours beyond me. And yeah, I appreciate you coming on, and it's super cool. Is there anything you'd like to leave folks with? Any closing words or any words of encouragement or anything you'd like to just say on the way out?
I think that you're worthy. That's the message a lot of us have missed when we're growing up and when we're in this society. We feel unprepared, unskilled, but you're worthy and you're good at what you do. Always remember that. No matter who is telling you you can't, you can. And no matter who's telling you you're not good enough, you were always good enough. And when you come to embrace that, your whole life changes. And it can be hard to hear that. It can be, you may be listening to me right now going, but not me. But that's who this is. You're who I'm talking to. You can take control of your life. You can get off. If you're on the couch, you can get off the couch and do 75 hard, even if what you're doing is 2 45-minute walks a day. Because every time you take a step, you take another step, and then you take a third step. That's how your life changes. It's just one step at a time. And it sounds simple, and it is simple, but it's not easy. It's hard. And that's okay too. Enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah, really good words to close on. I, again, appreciate you coming on. I want to thank everybody for being in the chat. And then also, too, if you want to check this out, it will be on the audio podcast, which is on Audible and Google and all the other platforms. So go over to Porterhouse and Teal Live and check that out. And yeah, thanks again, guys. And just go out and try to be better tomorrow than you were today. Thanks again.
Thank you.